Not all vegetables are beginner friendly, so here are 5 of my favorite vegetables for brand new gardeners. I'm also going to share some little tips along the way for those newbies and how they can make sure that they have a successful garden. Lettuce is our number one, and there's a lot of reasons behind that. And the first one is that they're quick. So lettuce is one of the fastest growing plants. I think radishes are a really good competition to them, but lettuce is a really common plant that most people eat, and it grows really fast, anywhere from 30 to 60 days, depending on what kind of varieties you're growing and how you want to eat them. There's a lot of other plants in this bed, so please excuse the snapdragons, but we have one that I cut back here. It's going for its second harvest. Same with this one. I have another one right here. I have one right here, and here's like one of my bigger ones right here. All of these are kind of intertwined, and I have them with some carrots, some snapdragons. I think there's some green onions over there. There's a red one here. I have a ton of lettuce. It's really forgiving because it can be direct seeded. It can be started in trays. You can start it as transplants. And even if you don't take care of it very well, like you don't fertilize it or water it as well as you should still get some kind of a crop. And that might be a crop that you can use as a cut and come again, where you're just taking some leaves. Maybe it gets kind of bolty because it's so hot. Oh my gosh, it's been so hot lately. I don't know what is happening. It is way too early to be this hot. I understand I live in Florida, but we usually have even just like a slight spring, and we went from like straight winter to dead of summer. Well, not dead of summer. It's not that bad, but it's getting close. But I'm just shocked at how hot it is. But when it gets hot, these plants do bolt and they get kind of tall. And they're not like making that perfect head that you see in the grocery store. But you could still eat all the leaves. So regardless of how well you take care of them, to be honest, or how well the weather is cooperating, these guys will push on and they will give you something, which is cool. A little tip for beginners. Lettuce is what's called a cool season crop. Every crop has a season that it likes, and we kind of divide these up into cool season, warm season, and down here in the South, we also have hot season. Hot season is our dead of summer, June, July, August. That's where we grow our hot season crops. The warm weather crops are going to be like a lot of the fruiting crops, like tomatoes, cucumbers, squash, corn, beans. Those are like in the Goldilocks family. They don't want it too cold and they don't want it too hot. So here in Florida, I grow them in spring and fall. And most of the other parts of the country, they grow them through, like late spring all the way to like early fall. But lettuce falls into the cool weather crop group, and they want to be grown when it's nice and cool. So for us here in Florida, that's going to be late fall to early spring, all the way through winter. They love the winter months. In more northern climates, they typically are some of the first things that you get out into the garden once your temperatures of your soils can handle. I think it's like 40 or 50 degrees. Once you start getting into that, you can put those into the ground. So for my beginners, you need to know the classification of the plant. Usually it's indicated on the seed packet, but you can also Google, is lettuce a cool weather plant? Is tomatoes a warm weather plant? Are sweet potatoes a hot weather plant? And they will give you an indication of which one of those groups they fall into. And if you can grow them during the time of year that they prefer to be grown, you're gonna have much higher success than trying to grow them outside of their season. Number 2 on my list is gonna be peas. I love peas for so many reasons, but probably the number one reason is you can start them directly. They're cool weather, so they do like to grow during the cooler season. And you can take a pea, which, by the way, if you didn't know, a pea seed is actually a pea, like the pea that we eat. It's just dried out, and you just put those into the soil. I particularly love these for beginners because, number one, you can find bush pea varieties or you can find vining. So you are going to have to do a little bit of intermediate trellising situations here. You don't have to go with something this large. You can definitely do something very, very simple like a tomato cage and just let it grow up on there. But the reason I really like peas for beginners is, number one, peas are so forgiving with being transplanted. A lot of us tend to not transplant seeds deep enough, or we do them too deep, and Pea seeds they're usually about 1 inch deep. So if you just use your fingertip and you get somewhere in that range, they'll be happy, and they won't be fussy, and they're not super hard to get them to germinate. They come up really easy. Just kind of water them right when you put them down, and check the water a little bit after that. And then after that, they'll just grow beautifully. I will say that an inoculant is a powder that you put with beans and peas that can be helpful. So if you've grown peas in the past as a beginner and you've had some struggles like the pea sprouts, and then it kind of goes downhill, turning yellow, drying out, those kinds of things, there is something called an inoculant, and basically it's a bacteria that the peas need. Peas and beans are in the legume family, and they have a hard time growing without this natural bacteria. So head over to a big box store. They usually have them a little packet of something called inoculant or bean planter booster or something like that. Those are all inoculants, and basically you just kind of sprinkle that on top of right when you're planting the seeds, and it gives it the bacteria it needs. And all of that bacteria stuff that it needs is so that it can convert the nitrogen. I'm not going to go too deeply into that, but it is a thought that if you have grown them in the past and you've struggled, you might just be missing a little inoculant. Now, my tip for beginners is going to be grow what you eat. I have a little bit of a funny story. All my life, I have hated eating peas. I think canned peas are disgusting. I think frozen peas are disgusting. And I think the fresh ones in the store are a little less disgusting, but all of them are pretty bad. And I've always hated peas, and people just swear by them, love them, call them sweet. And I'm like, they taste like grass to me. I don't think they taste good at all. And I decided to grow peas. Why would I grow peas if I don't like peas? Well, my husband liked them, so I'm kind of leaning on that. But honestly, if I'm being really truthful to myself, I wanted to grow peas to see if I could grow peas. It wasn't because I really thought that I would like peas. I just grew them because I like to grow everything. That is not the right path to go down. When you are a brand new gardener, grow the things that you like to eat. Just because your area does grow really well in, say, radishes, but you don't eat radishes, what's the point of growing the radishes? I mean, you can give them away. That's definitely an option, but why put all that effort and everything and not be excited about what you are producing and what you're eating? So definitely focus on the ones that you like or really love. Now here's where things got a little crazy for me when it came to the peas. I found out that peas grown at home are as beautiful and amazing as everyone has talked about for so many years. These things taste so good. They're candy. I come through the garden and I'm picking the peas off and I'm just popping them in my mouth because it feels like I'm having a little afternoon snack that's just basically sugar. These peas grown in the garden are exceptional. And I now cannot understand why anyone would ever not grow their own peas, because they are so far superior. They have quickly made it up my list of vegetables that I absolutely love to eat, which is so strange because my whole life I hated them. But if they're grown in my garden, I love them. So grow what you like. Number 3 on our list is going to be beans, and you can probably just barely see these guys. They're starting to pop up everywhere. These are beans. Now this bed in particular is a dry bean bed. So that's going to be like kidney beans, little red beans, pinto beans, black beans, anything that you would dry. I also have a green bean pole variety that I'm growing. A lot of people grow bush. I'm trying out a pole this year, but green beans or dry beans, kind of same situation. The reason why I love them for beginners is they're very similar to the peas. These are a dried bean seed. And so they're very common to what we're used to seeing. They're very forgiving when you direct seed them. If you push them down a little too far, or don't put them as far down, they're generally gonna germinate anyway. They don't care. They have the fastest germination rate that I've ever seen. 3 to 5 days is like where it's at. They pop up, it's like instant gratification. Another cool thing about beans is they transfer nitrogen into the soil. So putting a layer of beans in a bed is going to encourage and create improved soil health. Soil health is like kind of one of those intermediate, learning lessons. So not necessarily for our beginners here. We're just trying to get you to grow food. But it is never too early to start thinking about what are some easy ways that I can be helping my soil. One of those is growing things like beans or peas. or green beans, or dried beans, or long beans, or cowpeas, like any of those in the legume family are really gonna help with the soil, especially if when the plant is done, you clip it and drop it and leave it in the bed as a mulch. This is a great way to just start your journey down soil health. Another cool thing about beans is because they do help with soil health, they actually don't need any fertilizer. They are like the peas, and an inoculant is going to be helpful, but after that, you don't have to do anything. There's no fertilizing, there's no fussing with it, there's no pruning it. With the beans, most of these are all bush beans, and even some of the vining beans I've found, they're not like super aggressive viners. I almost never trellis them up. This is definitely a beginner plant. And it's so fun to do a different kinds of ones. Like you could do dry, you could do green, and you can get this little collection of all these different beans, and it's so much fun. And one last cool thing about beans is you could technically go over to your grocery store and find the packs of dry beans and use those as seeds. They're gonna be the cheapest seeds you've ever bought because you can get a whole bag of like 1,000 of them and just throw them all throughout the ground and have an entire cover crop of beans. And you can treat the soil with that, use the foliage from the plant as mulch, and then you also get a harvest. Coolest plant ever. The next one on our list, number 4, is gonna be cherry tomatoes. Now, tomatoes in themselves I don't think are super beginner friendly, but they are the most popular plant in the vegetable garden, so I know that most beginners are gonna jump to tomatoes. So let me encourage you, if you're brand new at gardening, go with a cherry tomato. You're gonna have a lot more luck with cherry tomatoes than you are with, like, say, a beefsteak. Beefsteak tomatoes take a long time. They don't produce as many tomatoes because the tomatoes are bigger. But if you lose 1 or 2 of them, you're losing a huge amount of harvest. If you lose 1 or 2 of a cherry, you still have hundreds of cherries that you're still going to pick from. So using a cherry tomato plant as your starter plant into the gardening world is really going to up your confidence because they do grow very prolific. They don't crack as much, they ripen faster, they're pretty bomb-proof, like whether or not you prune them, whether or not you use the proper trellis, they don't really care. They're just so fast in the tomato world that they just kind of move through those problems pretty quickly. So that's why that one is probably one of my biggest advice for brand new gardeners is to start with cherry tomatoes. Don't start with the paste, don't start with the vine ripe, don't start with the beefsteak. This is the way to go. Now, tip for beginner gardeners, it kind of goes along with this, is start small, right? Not just small as in the cherry tomato is small, but start small in your gardening adventure. So I say this, and I know I am so guilty of making this same mistake. Let me just tell you how, because you guys are just gonna laugh. This season, I was like so gung-ho and excited about starting a bunch of different kinds of tomatoes. I wanted to get some beefsteaks. I wanted to do different colored tomatoes. I want to do tomatoes that aren't known for our area. See if I can make it happen. I have cherries, paste, beefsteak. I got some that are like weird shapes. I think it's the Rebel Star, like just crazy shapes. I got green ones, yellow ones, orange ones. I have 45 tomato seedlings. I have 9 beds in my garden. I could fit them in here, but I couldn't grow anything else, right? So what am I doing over here? What am I doing with my life that I have 45 tomato seedlings when I can usually only accommodate about 20? Like I way overdid it. This is an example to you that you need to start small. Know what your garden can handle, how many plants it can do, and what you want to do in it. If you pick that you want to grow every single plant on the rainbow, every single plant on the list, you are going to struggle because you can't really dedicate the time to that one single plant. So yes, start small, as in small cherry tomatoes. Start small as in just a couple plants, and start small in your garden space as well. Go slowly. I know we all want to like jump in and be like experts in a year, but gardening is one of those things that it is a long-term journey. It is not a sprint. So don't bite off more than you can chew. Just enjoy the journey. Number 5 on our list is going to be herbs. I cannot talk about beginner gardeners, brand new gardens, without talking about herbs. Herbs are without a doubt the easiest plant to grow. And I'm going to share with you how I grow mine so that you can get the easiest plants too, because there is a hard way of growing herbs and then there's an easy way of growing herbs. And it kind of leads into my tip for beginners for this section, which is buy starts. I know in the gardening world, I know in all the YouTube videos, everyone are like, seeds are so much economical, they're so much, you know, cheaper, you can get so many plants, and all that is true. But the thing to know about seeds is they're hard, especially for herbs and flowers. They're a little bit harder, especially for perennials, they're a little bit harder. So yes, herbs can be grown from seed and they're very economical, but they're much more difficult. And for a beginner gardener, I have to encourage you that this is the place that you want to start with starts. If you want to do your peas and your green beans and your dry beans with seeds, definitely go for it. If you want to do it with your lettuce, I think that's a good option too. When it comes to your tomatoes, I would kind of lean into starts for that. That's a little bit pickier of a plant. When it comes to starts, these are a super picky plant when it comes to starting them from seed. So just go with the starts. The other cool thing about going with starts with these plants is you're paying for this once. Most of the time. Let me just square that away. There are some herbs that are annuals, which means they grow for just one season. I'm thinking basil. I'm sure I've got it around here somewhere. Then you have herbs that grow for a couple of years. We call these either tender perennials or short-lived perennials. I have one down here. I don't know if it's high enough for you could see, but that's parsley. Now my parsley's been living for like 3 or 4 years. I don't know. It hasn't gotten its stuff together and decided to die, but that's okay with me, right? It's supposed to only live for 2 years before it flowers and then it goes away. Then you have something like this. This is, I believe, lemon balm. Catnip, I can't remember, they look so similar to me. There's another one, let me spin this around. I have some sorrel right there. I have some oregano right here. I've got a rosemary over there. There's some garlic chives down here at the bottom. Those are all perennials. Those are gonna live for years and years and years. So if you buy a start from the store, and yeah, that start's gonna be $5 or $6, buy them as small as you possibly can, cheapest as you can. Yes, you're going to pay that, but this plant is going to supply your need for years. I mean, this oregano plant that I have, I keep cutting it back and it regrows, cutting it back, regrows. I got mint in here, lemon balm, catnip, chives, like I mentioned, all the other ones. I've got more over there. I got a ton. And I have never had to buy another plant again. I just kind of cut a piece, grow some more. Or they just grow naturally on their own for long periods of time. So spending a couple of bucks one time a year to get these plants, and then they live for, I don't even know how long they live for, probably like 5 to 10 years, maybe even longer if you're really taking care of them, maybe even longer than that if you're kind of taking cuttings and continuing their life cycle along. They could last for forever for you. I mean, they're just a great plant, and giving it $5, which by the way, to get the pack of seeds is kind of be 2 or 3. And you see how much oregano this is. I'm not eating that much oregano in a year. Like I cut this back, it regrows in 2 months. Cut it back, regrows in 2 months. This one plant supplies me with all I need. So when I get a seed pack in it, it's got like 50 seeds in it. I'm not growing 50 oregano plants. I'm growing one. So I can pay $3 or $4 for the seed packet for oregano, or I can just buy the start, which is about $5 or $6. Either way, I'm getting a plant for life, and they already did the hard work of getting this seeded and growing and alive and everything, and I don't have to go through the sometimes challenging aspect of getting herbs to germinate. Getting herbs to germinate, some of them have some special needs, right? Some of them want cold stratification. Some of them need light to germinate. They're kind of a little bit of a fussier seed as opposed to most of the vegetable seeds. So this is where you go. And for my beginners, like never feel bad about starting from starts. It just boils my blood when I'm online and I see people talking about like, oh, I can't believe you bought starts, that you're just wasting your money. No, you're not. No, you're not. Whether I spend $5 on this plant or $3 on a pack of seeds for a plant that's going to produce for years and years and years, yeah, the ROI is pretty close, basically the same at the end of a 10-year stretch. And when you're talking about tomatoes, that's an annual, right? There could be better arguments there that starting from seed is more important. And yeah, we generally grow a lot more tomato plants than we do like an oregano plant. So the idea of starting them from seeds is kind of a better, stronger argument. But at the same time, the amount of tomatoes that a tomato start plant produces, as opposed to, you know, that one in a seed, and then the ROI or return on investment of those, whether you spent $3 on the seed packet or whether you spent $5, you know, depending on how many of the plants you're growing. I mean, I did a whole video not too long ago, my #1 money saving crop, which was tomatoes. And I put down all of the calculations to return on investment, like how long it takes for you to make your money back. I based it on starts. And I did calculate what it was for seeds, and I'm telling you, them numbers were not that different, y'all. It really was not that different. So when it comes to tomatoes, which is a high production plant, or when it comes to herbs that are a long-lived plant, don't feel bad. Go get some starts, y'all. I get some starts. I've been gardening 10 years. I get starts all the time. I just picked up a bunch of starts. Like, they're in here. I kind of put them around. I got some pretty flowers. I got all kinds of stuff. I always go get starts. I love getting starts. Don't ever feel like you can't go get starts. Go get starts. If your tomato plants that you started from seed just suddenly died, go get some starts. Never take that as like the end all be all to being an expert gardener. I know wonderful gardeners that buy all of their plants as starts because it works for them. Some of them live in really cold climates, and it's such a pain to go through grow lights and the special soils and all that other stuff you have to do to be able to grow them indoors, when all that costs stuff, and it's sometimes cheaper to just buy starts. Okay, off that soapbox. But if you're one of my beginner gardeners, let me know what you're gonna start. I cannot wait to hear about what you're gonna be growing in your garden. Happy gardening, guys.